Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
It's the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Prograis.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 351 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined as ever by former heavyweight world title challenger Mr. Fast Eddie Chambers. Eddie, how you doing this week, my man?
I'm doing good, my man. How about you?
Always good when speaking with you, Eddie. We're going to dive straight into the review part of the show. Only two cards to go over from last week. Let's start with this one. It took place on Saturday. It was kind of like midday UK time, but obviously evening in Australia at the Gold Coast Convention Centre in Broadbeach, Queensland, Australia. Over here, a complete and utter shock. The main event, Maris Briedis, now 28-2, dethroned over 12 rounds unanimously against Jai Opetaia, who's now 22-0, and he's now the new IBF Cruiserweight World Champion. Very wide in the end for Jai Opetaia. 8 rounds to 4 twice and 7 rounds to 5 on the other card. So unanimous and quite clear. I didn't give Opetaia a chance in hell, and I have to hold my hands up and say I was totally wrong. I hadn't seen him fight as a pro. I know he went to, I think, one of the Olympic Games and went out in his first fight. So I just didn't think there was much to him. But he showed a good chin. He had a broken jaw, I believe, in 2 places. His mouth at the end of the fight was just forced open, like he couldn't close his mouth. It was wide open, and the uppercuts were just, oh man, honestly, I think the police were getting ready to arrest Briedis for how much damage he was doing to the guy's jaw. But Briedis tried to kind of go for it late on, and he was trailing massively in the fight. He was cut early on as well, Briedis, and I think maybe if there was a 13th and 14th round, then perhaps Briedis could have done something, but no, he seemed to leave it too late. Jai Opetaia had a really, really good start, and he just racked up a very clear, lead early on, and Briedis was just there chasing, really, and he didn't come close, so he started to trouble him late on, and like I say, if there was a couple more rounds, maybe he would have been able to stop him or something, but he loses clear, and to be honest, that's probably the end of his career, because I think he's about 30, somewhere between about 36 and 38 now, Briedis, so I think that's going to be the end for him. He's had a really strange last few years. Moving out now to the Wembley Arena in London. I was there for this card. I was sat ringside. Let's talk about the undercard first. We're going to start here with Mark Chamberlain. He racked up another win. He's now 11-0, a unanimous decision over 10 against Mark Vidal, who took a real hiding, to be totally honest. Mark Vidal lost every single round. He's now 13-3 with 5 draws. It was for the vacant IBF European lightweight title. Chamberlain absolutely battered him, to be totally honest. It wasn't even close. Jason Cunningham, now 31-7. He was knocked out in round 4 by former 2-time world champion Zolani Tete, now 30-4. It was for the IBF International, the vacant WBO International, and the Commonwealth Super Bantamweight titles. Cunningham down twice in round 4 prior to the knockout. Jason Cunningham was having a fantastic run. He really was. I think he beat Gamal Yafai, then beat Brad Foster, and he was just on a sensational run, because once upon a time he was a guy that, I don't want to call him a journeyman, but he was in there as the away fighter, in the, on the B side, in the away corner, losing most of the time when he was on a big show. And he's had to do things the hard way. He's never had it easy. He's had to fight on small hall shows and stuff like that, but he went on an excellent run, and he got in there with Zolani Tete, who was a world-class fighter, but sometimes he seems to just vanish, and you just never know what version of Tete you're going to get. And despite all of that, you'd still have to favour Tete against Jason Cunningham because, I mean, Jason Cunningham, hasn't nowhere near proved he's world level in any stretch of anyone's imagination. Despite becoming European champion, it's still not quite world level. And Zolani Tete has in the past showed glimpses of, true elite level. So, yeah, you always had to favour Tete, but we didn't quite know what he had left in the tank, and pretty much from the first 30 seconds you could see he still had all the reflexes and all the moves. And even though he didn't really make a mark in the first round, you could still see that he wasn't done. He had something left in the tank, certainly enough to beat Cunningham. So yeah, let's just say that fight went as I thought it would, and I had I think I'd even backed him for the knockout, which was 2-1. So good stuff for Zolani Tete. And Jason Cunningham, like I say, knocked out in round 4. Zolani Tete moves on, and I want to see him again because he can't really afford at this point in his career to disappear back to South Africa for another 3 years fighting in obscurity. And the main event, Joe Joyce now 14-0 with 13 KOs, a TKO also in round 4. This was against Christian Hammer, who's now 27-10. It was for the WBC Silver and WBO International Heavyweight titles. Hammer down once in the third round and 3 times in round 4. Really good fight to watch ringside because you could see the power shots that both men landed. Particularly the first round was really interesting because Hammer won that round, and I was shocked. I mean, he had Joyce walking into maybe 4 or 5 absolute peaches of right hands, like an overhand right, boom, right on the button. But of course we know that Joe Joyce has a rock solid chin, and he was taking the shots well. But I was shocked to see, Hammer fighting with that much, I guess, belief and confidence, just throwing haymakers, and they were landing. So I thought, wow, he's here to actually win. He's not going to come and lay down. He's not going to come and find a way out like he did against Hughie Fury, even though he's in with Joe Joyce, who you'd say is better than Hughie Fury. So yeah, everyone ringside gave Hammer the round. It was quite a big round, really. He landed some great punches. Then round 2 was a close one. Round 3, of course, he took a knee, so he was down at the end of the round. He lost that one 10-8. Christian Hammer, and he started to really blow quite heavy by about the third round, as I kind of expected. I thought, there's no way it goes to the second half of the fight. I bet on that as well, and so I was quite happy when it was all said and done. I had Zolani Tete by a knockout, and I had Joe Joyce within 6 rounds, and a couple other bets where I had him within 4 rounds, and he did it in 4 rounds, so that was excellent there. But yeah, every time, it was kind of funny because every time that Hammer would go down in round 4, he'd go down and he'd look at his corner, he'd shake his head, and you'd be thinking, wow, he's absolutely done. But then he'd beat the count and he'd look absolutely finished and exhausted. It was like it was kidology, because when the referee said fight on, he'd kind of duck down, looking at the floor, then come up with a haymaker of a right hand, hoping he could connect and knock Joyce out with one punch. But it never worked, and he was hitting fresh air most of the time and making himself even more tired. And Joe Joyce, like I say, had him down 3 times and out of there. That is it though for the oh no, it's not. There's one more fight card to mention just briefly from the review part of the show. It took place at the City Hall in Hull, Yorkshire. Friend of the show, Bradley Ray. Brad the Stingray, now 14-0, a points win over 6 there against Angel Emelov, who's now 10-42 with a draw. Good stuff there for friend of the show, Bradley Ray. That is it though for the review part of the show. Flown through that. The final thing for me to do before we wrap this part up is to welcome our special guest on this week's podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the undefeated number 5 ranked welterweight in the world with the WBO. It is, of course, Mr. Mikey Mckinson. Mikey, welcome back on the show, my man.
How you doing, mate? Number 10 with the WBA now as well.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Number 12 on BoxRec. So things are good. I'm in a great position. I'm happy. And yeah, big fight ahead.
Absolutely, man. It's good to have you back on. So we last spoke back in August of last year. It was the week after you'd beaten Ranowski in Eddie Hearn's back garden. Since then, it's been, I guess, a little bit of a roller coaster, really. I guess that's probably an understatement.
Yeah, has it been a year since I spoke to you last?
Yeah, man. It was last August. So 11 months
yeah,
ago.
obviously I had a big fight planned for March. Found out in November, so 4 months preparation for that. It got to fight weeks. We went to America, got to fight week, and obviously Ortiz got rhabdomyosis and had to withdraw. But nonetheless, we still got to fight in America. We beat a good opponent in Alex Martin in LA in March. Got paid very well for it, and still got to be I think I'm the first professional from my city ever to fight in the States. So yeah, things are good, and we got the fight rescheduled. So looking forward to August 6th.
And I do want to briefly touch on that March 19th date in LA. Obviously, you mentioned it. The fight gets pushed back due to the medical diagnosis on Ortiz's side. Alex Martin, you won unanimously over 10, but I think it wasn't your greatest performance. A lot of people online were very critical. Most of those armchair fans, though, don't take into account, of course, that you'd spent the whole camp preparing for an aggressive, orthodox knockout artist. You end up fighting a southpaw, pure boxer who wanted to box off the back foot. Was that the reason behind you not looking your best, Mikey?
Do you know what? I don't think the commentary done me any favours. Obviously, I went to America. I fought a Golden Boy fighter on a Golden Boy show, and the commentary was very, very biased against me. I was always up in the fight. I'd done what I had to do. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but I spent 4 months preparing to fight a big punching, aggressive orthodox, and fight week, I said yes to 7 different names altogether within the 5 days. And one was tall, one was short, one was strong, one was slick. They were all different, and I said yes to every single one. And whatever reason, one by one, they fell through. One by one, they fell through. And in the end, we got stuck with the complete opposite style of Ortiz, a slick southpaw, 250 amateur fights. Very, very good amateur pedigree Alex Martin had, compared to my average 50 fights. but yeah, like good fighters got it done. 2 southpaws in there, bit of a clash of styles. But nonetheless, I won the fight clear. The judges gave it to me clear. The commentary didn't. But yeah, we got it done. And I think the reason I've got invited back and another opportunity in America is because the way I handled myself over there, with a very, very mentally tough week. Obviously, I handled myself very well in the press. I'm a decent talker as well, and I won a lot of support over there. Maybe not with the performance, but with the way my character was and the whole experience. I won a lot of supporters, and yeah, got my opportunity again.
Yeah, your attitude, I think, is the word probably best. You gave Alex Martin his 4th loss, just to throw it in there. He's never lost a fight, according to the scorecards, that wide ever. So you gave him his most clearest defeat. As you mentioned, the fight's back on with Ortiz. I'll be honest, I didn't think that we'd see the fight rescheduled. I just thought, oh man, it's going to just disappear, especially because we didn't know if Ortiz was going to be boxing again. It was really crazy. Did you always kind of know it would be rescheduled, Mikey, or not?
No, I did. When I was over there, they said they'll reschedule it down the line. Then there was rumours he'd never fight a 147 again, but there are rumours. And then when I see that he was trying to fight Avanesian, getting a fight with him, I thought I was a little bit frozen out because I was promised. But in my heart, I never actually did believe that I'd get the fight again. So I'm happy that Golden Boy done the right thing in offering me the fight. It was pretty easy to negotiate. I just said, send me the original contract, just change the date. And yeah, now we got it. Hopefully everything goes well, and he's healthy come time I get to Texas. Because this is huge. I don't want it snatched away from me again.
Yeah, it is huge, and you touched on it there. It takes place in Texas this time. It's obviously Ortiz's hometown. Does that make a difference in any way to you?
Not really. I was going to LA, it was a Golden Boy show, and I was fighting Golden Boy Superstar in LA. Texas, okay, it's his hometown, but I was built for these things. I'm built different to many others. I've been the B-side several times. I've beat people in their hometowns. I've been booed and abused coming to the ring before and still won. Now we do it on a bigger level. Now I go to Texas. It's going to be very hostile. It's good, and I'm the enemy. I'm the villain come August 6th. But you know what? I'm sure with my attitude and my skills and everything else that comes with it, I'm sure I'll win a lot of supporters after the fight.
Excellent, man.
But we're prepared for it to be very hostile. But you know, like I said, I'm built different, and I'm built to be in these type environments.
Yeah, no, I believe you. And you're in camp now. We're exactly 1 month away today from the fight. What is going down, Mikey, at this stage of training camp?
Yeah, we're getting it done. I'm very focused. I'm traveling to Italy tomorrow. I was in Italy a couple of weeks ago as well, getting some good rounds, and I'm traveling when I'm back from Italy. I'm going up north for a few. I think the remainder of the week. So I'm doing a lot of travelling, getting the work. It's very tunnel vision at the moment. I just can't wait to get to Texas, get settled in over there, adapt, and get focused on the fight.
And how do you see the fight playing out? I mean, we know he's going to bring the pressure. We know, or I should say I know, that you fight at your best when someone's coming at you, but you'll no doubt have to elevate your game higher than we've seen you do, under the lights before. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on that. I perform better when someone's coming at me. And you look at my last 3 fights, I haven't been able to fight like that because I've had to be the one forcing it. With Congo, I was forcing it with Ranowski. He was in a shell, and Alex Martin was negative too. So people, like the last 3 fights, I haven't been able to showcase like how good I am. I'm a lot better when we've got somebody that's coming for it. Vergil Ortiz is a very, very good fighter. He's better than anybody I've ever been in the ring with before, obviously. He's a world-class fighter, but he's shown vulnerabilities, and it's not an impossible task. If anyone can exploit things he does, it's definitely me and my style. Like, yeah, we know how tough this fight is, but you've got to think, by the time August 6th comes, Vergil Ortiz would have been out of the ring for 51 weeks. For a young guy with a lot of momentum and a lot of hype, just to have that snatched away for nearly a whole year is tough. And he's having essentially his comeback fight against somebody that's slick, somebody who's very awkward, and somebody who's very smart, and somebody that has never tasted defeat. He's never been in the ring with anyone that's never tasted defeat, So I'm going to bring all sorts of problems to Ortiz. And like I said before, it's not an impossible task. I really do believe in myself. And yeah, this is huge for me, everyone around me. And I really do believe I can do it.
And I just want to say this real quickly because it could go in a different area. I just want to say I remember watching you. I think I've said this a million times to you, but when I was ringside and saw you fight Sammy McNess, that was the fight I thought, wow, this kid is talented. And of course, that was a fight where he came to you, and honestly, you looked unbelievable that night there. That was what made me a big fan of yours. Moving on to my next question. Ortiz, obviously ranked number 1 with the WBA, WBC, WBO. His world title shot is imminent, you'd have to say. Taking a fight against someone as difficult of an opponent as you are for him is very risky. It is a comeback kind of thing, like you said. Does the winner fight for a world title in their next fight, pretty much?
Yeah, they've got to, really. I know the belts are held up at the moment and stuff, but like, when I beat Ortiz, there'll be nothing else I'm looking at. Do you know what I mean? I don't look past August 6th. This is my world title. Yeah. This is my world title. I'm a big underdog. So I'm fully focused on Ortiz. I'm obsessed with Ortiz right now. But, the winner is in a very, very good position. And, my life's just about to change. I beat Ortiz and I'm an overnight superstar. I can call the shots with what happens next in my career.
Oh man, it is so exciting. I cannot wait for the date, just a month away today. I hope it flies by. My final two questions for you, Mikey. I always like to ask your opinion on other fights that's taking place. We're going to go to heavyweight for these two here. 2 weeks after your fight in Saudi, Usyk Joshua 2, and also much more sooner this weekend, Chisora Pulev 2. What's your opinion on those two?
So obviously Pulev and Chisora this weekend. Firstly, I was watching a little face-off again today. Pulev trying to get under his skin, and I was expecting Chisora to cause chaos, but Chisora is one of my favourite characters in boxing. To be fair, I'm always rooting for Chisora. I really am. Always in exciting fights and always gives it his all. Do I see him winning? I think he can, but I would put my money on Pulev actually. I'd put my money on Pulev. And with the Usyk and Joshua fight, Joshua does, in my opinion, need to bring something completely different. Like Usyk's skill set could beat Joshua easily again. But obviously with Joshua's change of teams, he's obviously the underdog now. He's got something to take from Usyk, and I really do believe he can become 3-time heavyweight champion of the world. But he needs to bring something a lot different than what he did from the first fight, because if not, it'll be the same result.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Without a doubt, I think it's hard to see it going any other way than what we saw the first time. And just finally, Mikey, if you've got any closing words just before we wrap it up, before you sign out, what's your final message to the listeners, my man?
Just don't sleep on Mckinson. There's been many times before that people have wrote me off in my career. I can name 6-7 times people have wrote me off, and every single time I prove people wrong with a smile on my face. So don't sleep on me, because I can really, really produce something special and shock the world on August 6th.
Absolutely. Like I say, 1 month today. I cannot wait. Listen, Mikey, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, my man. Thank you for your time. Best of luck August 6th. And, of course, we're all behind you all the way, my man.
Brilliant, mate. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. Friend of the show, surgeon prospect Ernesto Mercado returns to action August 25th at the Hangar in Costa Mesa, California. He will be fighting on a Roy Engelbrecht Promotions card. I believe that's the guy's name. No opponent just yet for Ernesto Mercado, who had that unbelievable amateur record and has knocked everyone out as a pro. In other news, Liam Smith has signed a promotional contract with Boxer, so he's going to be back on Sky Sports. So that's brilliant stuff there. They're talking already about him fighting Chris Eubank Jr. I wouldn't mind that fight at all. Elsewhere, it's finally been announced we're going to see Clarissa Shields get it on with Savannah Marshall. That one to take place September the 10th. It's a great fight between two women, and I always pump up women's boxing, but this really is as good as it gets. This is the same kind of level as Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. Clarissa Shields against Savannah Marshall. Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall have that history, of course, about 10 years ago, where Savannah Marshall actually beat Clarissa Shields in the amateurs, and that's the only loss that Clarissa has in her entire amateur and pro career. That one loss to Savannah Marshall, and Savannah Marshall since then, she didn't actually do anything in terms of medals in the Olympics, whereas Clarissa Shields did. She won a gold medal at the Olympics twice, and she's, turned pro and has picked up about 10 world titles. Savannah Marshall, just the one world title, still undefeated under Peter Fury, and she has been banging out the same girls that Clarissa Shields went the distance with. So I think they've got two common opponents, if I'm not mistaken, and both of the girls went the distance with Clarissa, whereas both the girls got knocked out by Savannah Marshall. I think I'm right in saying that. I think it was Femke Hermans and Hannah Rankin, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, it's going to be a great fight, and on the undercard, it's another fantastic all-women's fight. Michaela Mayer gets in with Alicia Baumgardner. Wow. Michaela Mayer, of course, undefeated. I think she's coming off that win last time out. Can't remember who it was against now. But she had a fantastic fight last year, of course, with Maeva Hamadouche and Alicia Baumgardner. I'm not sure if she's defended her world title just yet, but she knocked out Terry Harper, of course. So that's going to be a double header there between, four females, really, two fights, of course. And that is, again, September 10th at the O2 Arena in London. I really hope to be there because I think it's a fantastic couple of fights there, and there's going to be a full undercard announced, and apparently it's all going to just be women's fights. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can sell out 20,000 seats. I think that's going to be a bit of a challenge, but all the best to them. In other news, no, I think that's about it actually for the news. So yeah, that is that. Moving on now to the preview part of the show. We're going to start here at the KRK in Ekaterinburg in Russia. This one is on Saturday, July 9th. We're going to see Magomed Kurbanov, 22-0. That's the guy that controversially got the decision over Liam Smith. He's in a 10-rounder against former world champion Patrick Teixeira of Brazil, who's 31-3. That's it for that one. Moving out now to the O2 Arena in Greenwich, London, United Kingdom. Let's start with the undercard. Solomon Dakers, 3-0, gets in with Kevin Espindola, who's 7-4. We've got Ramla Ali, 5-0, the female managed by Anthony Joshua. She gets in with Augustina Rojas, who's 6-1. Bit of a step up there. We've got Kalmin Agyarko, who's 11-0, in a 10-rounder against Lucas Masic, who is 28-4 with a draw. That one's for the vacant WBA International Super Welterweight title. We've got Fabio Wardley, 13-0 in a 10-rounder against Kingsley Ibe. I'm not sure he's had much notice, but he's 7-2 with a draw. An interesting fight for me, just a tiny bit here. Felix Cash, 15-0 in a 10-rounder against Vaughan Alexander, the brother of Devon. He's 17-6 with a draw, but he's usually very durable. He's only been stopped once in those 6 losses, and it was to Zach Parker. He usually is very durable. He doesn't get knocked out. Felix Cash, on the other hand, obviously looked brilliant when he knocked out Denzel Bentley. However, in his last fight, it was a bit sticky for him, to be honest. I know he was coming off some ring rust, or some ring inactivity, but he didn't look great. And I'm wondering, I'm not too sure if he's going to be able to put Vaughan Alexander away. So if there's some value in a Felix Cash points win, I'm going to be on that. So that could be interesting. I haven't seen the odds yet. Maybe that's what they're expecting to happen. But if it's something like 2-1 for Felix Cash on points, I will be on that one. We've got the rematch between Israel Madrimov, 8-0 in a 12-rounder against Michel Soro, who's 35-3 with a draw. I'm not really sure what the point of this rematch is, to be honest with you. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that when they had the first fight, I want to say that maybe Soro, I think, was winning it, if I'm not mistaken. I really can't even remember watching it now, but I know it took place a few months ago. I think it was both guys' last fight. And I think I'm right in saying that maybe Soro might have been winning or something, and then Madrimov come from behind to stop him or something. So I'm not sure why there's this rematch. I really am not too sure why. And then the main event, another heavyweight rematch. Derek Chisora, 32-12 these days in a 12-rounder against Kubrat Pulev, 29-2. Seems like Pulev has been around for such a long time, yet would you believe he's had over 10 fights less than Derek Chisora? And Kubrat Pulev, those 2 losses, no shame in them whatsoever. They were to Vladimir Klitschko, a good version of him, by the way, and Anthony Joshua. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. You'd normally say that it's got points written all over it, just like the first fight, but Pulev was able to beat Chisora very easily, in my opinion, in the first fight, even though I think it was a split or majority decision. I couldn't understand why. I felt that Pulev had won very clearly. And I'm just not too sure who's got the most left in the tank. I think that's what it really comes down to. However, Pulev looked quite good last time out when he beat Jerry Forrest, and Chisora looked awful when he was getting dropped by Joseph Parker with shots that didn't even look like much. So it seems like his punch resistance has just disappeared. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I guess, I mean, if Chisora can't take a punch anymore, then Pulev's going to probably even stop him. But I think my money would probably be on for the fight to go to distance, but I'm not sure who's going to win because the crowd's going to be there for Chisora. Chisora can outwork Pulev if he really turns up for it, but I'm not sure if he can turn up for fights anymore based off of what we saw last time out against Parker. It was shocking. And Kubrat Pulev, like I say, coming off a good win last time out, even though he's getting right up there in age. Yeah, did you want to say something about that fight there, Eddie?
Yeah, this is, I think, the old folks' home of boxing right now with this here fight. But at the same time, I think Pulev looked pretty decent in his obviously his last outing, and he had a little crazy sideshow kind of fight with Frank Mir, which was a little intriguing. But he ended up winning. Like he should have won it, knocking him out early. I don't know about Chisora at this point, but just when we were all counting him out a little while ago, he came out of nowhere and gave a good count of himself against Usyk and a few other guys actually too, which kind of surprised me. So I mean, you kind of don't know what you're going to get from Chisora, and he has the heart, he has the motor most of the time in the past anyway. But normally he also had the punch resistance, but now it seems like that's kind of failing a little bit. And I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen in this particular fight, because once again, you said, like, I think the first fight he didn't do as that well, I guess, with him in the first fight, and now he seems to be a little bit more gone, or a lot more gone than he was then. And I guess, I don't know what he's expecting at this point, but he's got a fighter's heart. He's going to go out there and try, and he's going to put his best foot forward. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a good foot. So, I'm action-wise, it could be interesting, but, I just don't know. It just depends on which guy gets old first in front of us. So, we'll see.
And moving out now to the White Sands Event Center in Plant City, Florida, USA. Over here, we've got an undefeated prospect, Cesar Francis, 10-0 with 6 KOs, a welterweight. In his last fight, I mean, I say he's a prospect, he's 31, he's a prospect, but they're really trying to, I guess, fast track him. In his last fight, he was able to beat Mohamed Mamoun, who some people will remember, a French guy that I think once upon a time beat Sam Mckinson, actually. And he's a decent fighter, Mamoun, and I think he also beat Tyrone McKenna, but didn't get the decision. Anyway, this guy was able to beat him in a close-ish fight. But, that's the kind of level he's at. He's quite a good fighter. Well, anyway, he gets in with former world champion, friend of the show, Raimundo Beltran, 37-9 with a draw. That's a huge risk, I'd say, for a guy that's only 10-0. Unbelievable there. But, yeah, I like fights like that. It's a big risk. On the undercard, Christian Fun, who's 8-0 in an 8-rounder against Curtis Harper, who's 13-8. I can't believe he's still getting on fight cards. I'm sure they're not going to put him on TV. He might walk out the ring again like he did against Efia Jagba. Moving out now to the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. This one's going to be live on Showtime. I absolutely cannot wait for this card here, by the way. Let's start with the undercard. We've got Frank Martin, 15-0 in a 10-rounder against Jackson Marinez, who's 19-2. That'll be a good fight, by the way. We've also got Ramon Cardenas, who's 20-1 in a 10-rounder against Michelle Banquez, who's also 20-1. We've got Rashidi Ellis, who's 23-0 in a 10-rounder against Alberto Parmetta, who is 17-1. And now getting on to the two really juicy fights. We're going to start with this one here. It's the chief support. I believe. We've got Brandon Figueroa, 22-1 with a draw, coming off that controversial loss last time out to Stephen Fulton in a fight where he threw over 1,000 punches himself. He gets in with Carlos Castro, who's 27-1. Both men coming off losses there, their sole losses of their career. Carlos Castro's loss was to Luis Nery. It was a split decision loss, and Castro himself was down in the first round. Obviously, we know that Brandon Figueroa got in with Luis Nery and took his O and stopped him. I think that was about a year ago now or something like that. So yeah, doesn't necessarily mean that Brandon Figueroa is going to have a lot of fun with Carlos Castro. You know, things don't work like that. Triangle theories don't work like that in boxing. But it's going to be interesting. They're both really super bantamweights moving up here to featherweight for this one. So it's going to be interesting. And the main event, we had him on, I think it was last week's show. Mark Magsayo of the Philippines, 24-0, defending his WBC featherweight world title that he just ripped away from Gary Russell Jr. He gets in with Ray Vargas, who in some ways I guess is a bit of a forgotten man because the guy is 35-0, but no one's been really talking about him, and the reason why they haven't been talking about him is because he's been quite inactive. He's only had one fight in the last 3 years, and 3 years ago he was a world champion. He defended his title. I'm not sure what kept him out of the ring, because he boxed in July of 2019. That was the last fight he had as a world champion, and he won the fight. And then he was out the ring for about maybe just under 2.5 years, and he wasn't a world champion anymore. So I'm not sure what happened there, and I think he moved up in weight as well. So I don't know what kept him out for so long, but he's still a really good fighter. So yeah, like I say, this one is at featherweight. But yeah, once upon a time there was a lot of hype around Vargas, but he's been so inactive that yeah, the hype isn't really there anymore, and I think it's going to be quite interesting. I know that Mark Magsayo seems to deliver on entertainment every single time we see him, so all the best to him. He's a very, very nice guy. Moving out now to the final card to mention. It takes place actually on Wednesday, so this time next week we will be reviewing it. So here we are previewing it. It's at the Ota City General Gymnasium in Tokyo, Japan. Let's start with the undercard. We've got Daigo Higa, who these days is 17-2 with a draw. I remember once upon a time when he was coming through, Daigo Higa, and I think he was 14-0, if I'm not mistaken, with 14 KOs. That's what I think he was. Might have been 15-0, 15 KOs. And he got knocked out by Christopher Rosales in a real big upset loss. And I think he was really weight drained. I think he fouled the weight and all the rest of it. Then he was out the ring for about 2 years. Then he come back and he never really looked the same, to be totally honest. He come back with a win, then a draw, then a win. And his last fight, he lost to a guy who was 3-0, by the way. So that was a year and a bit ago. And now he gets back in with this guy here, who is called Froilan Salodar, who's 32-5, super flyweight. This is the guy. Okay, this is the guy that lost in December, just gone, to Andrew Maloney. Okay, interesting. But yeah, once upon a time, Daigo Higa was this killer coming through, and you know, he's a world champion and all the rest of it. And yeah, it's crazy because he is another guy that's, you know, his career's just disappeared really so rapidly. But yeah, still a really exciting fighter. He's had 20 fights. Remember, the guy's only a super flyweight or whatever. The guy has had 20 fights. Only 2 of them have gone the distance. So yeah, every single win he's got has been by knockout. Elsewhere on that card, the main event, Kazuto Ioka, 28-2, defending his WBO World Super Flyweight title against Donny Nietes, who I believe is probably I think he's a 4-weight world champion. 43-1 with 6 draws, over 12 rounds there. Yeah, it's a good fight. Donny Nietes, at this point in his career, I don't know what he's got left. Has he got enough left to beat Ioka? Possibly. It's going to be good. It's going to be good in Tokyo. But anyway, that is it for the preview part of the show. We've kind of whizzed through this show very quickly. In part 1, we did the review part of the show. Our special guest this week was Michael Mckinson, who, of course, in just a month from today, gets in with Vergil Ortiz Jr. It's going to be a fantastic fight between the undefeated American and the undefeated Brit. Of course, I'm pulling for my man, Mikey Mckinson. And then in part 2, we started it with the news part of the show. We wrapped it up with the preview part. The final thing for me to do is to come in with the outro, which I'll do in just a few seconds. Okay, and this wraps up episode 351 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. A special thank you to our special guest, the undefeated welterweight contender Mikey Mckinson. Just a month now till he gets in Texas against Vergil Ortiz Jr. The biggest thanks of all, though, goes out to you, the listeners. But that's about everything from myself. Enjoy your weekends, people. Stay safe, and we shall see you all again next week.